And we are live. Good morning, Bryan Armentrout, the Food Safety Foundation. I am here with my very good friend, Jose Sabal from Sabal Consulting. Jose, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. I'm very happy. I mean, I'm very fortunate, by the way.
Yeah, that's a good thing, right? I mean, this is a week where if you let it mess with your head, right, it's going to be a really stressful week, right? Everything going on in
Oh,
the
yes.
U.S., the election.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I think I'm like most people, right? I don't care, conservative, liberal, whatever. Everybody's just like, just get this over with, please.
Yes, I
This is
agree with you.
too much stress on top of everything else
Yep.
that's going on. I mean, come
Yeah,
on,
it's
really.
and Brian, especially because the you know COVID and all of those things, this has not been easy.
Mm,
What can you do? Can I go out? Can I, don't go out? How can I'm going to purchase my food? And what about the safety of the food because it's being touched by other people? And
yeah.
what about if you get into the supermarket and there is someone sick and they're using mask or not using mask? And oh my goodness, you go out and you're just stressed trying
Yeah.
to find out what is the best way to do things.
Right. Well, then you see these other people, right, that post videos of other people getting in other people's faces, being like, "You need to put on a mask," and doing this type of thing. It's like, oh, come on. It's like we have enough stress as it is. Please,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Um, oh, we are currently, I should say about this, right? We are currently live on LinkedIn. We're also live on Facebook, and we're live on Periscope, which is Twitter. So welcome everybody. Glad you're here.
Oh my
Please
goodness.
come in. So Jose and I are both food safety consultants. We love this stuff, right? And so we put together this talk on Fridays to dive into different topics around food safety and have a discussion on this. And we love talking to each other. So we got kind of ramble. So I apologize for that, right? We get going on the weather. So Jose's in Florida. I'm in Colorado. We were talking before we got on air, death and destruction in Florida got down to, what did you say, 69 degrees?
Oh yes, it was freezing here.
Okay. Well, here in Colorado, beautiful. It's going to be around mid 70s, so very
Oh,
atypical, gorgeous weather. Snow on the way this weekend. On
yeah.
I think Sunday they're saying snow. So it's just kind of life in Colorado. So we'll see how all that goes.
Yep.
So one of the things that is always nice about this, right? So welcome everyone. We're really happy to have you. And of course, it's 8 in the morning for me. It's 10 in the morning for Jose. But we like to start off with a nice drink of our beverage of choice. So I've got my
Oh yeah.
coffee in my
And I got mine here.
in your beautiful flower mug. That just cracks me up. Now, did you buy that or did somebody else get that for you? What's the story with that mug?
This is my wife's favorite mug.
Oh,
But the reason is that it is so big that it holds a lot of tea. And I
uh,
drink a lot of tea.
so
So
did you steal her mug?
well, she has no problem in borrowing that.
Funny. So let's have our drink. Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, this is beautiful. I
Beautiful.
just got a mix of green tea and lemon ginger,
Mm,
and it's very nice.
nice, nice.
That
So
combination is very nice.
So speaking of tea and coffee, right? These are all ingredients, right, from suppliers. And so part of the topic for today
Oh
is
yeah.
supplier control, right? Huge, huge topic. I'm working with some customers. I'm helping to build their food safety plans and their quality systems. Sanitation, supplier controls. I mean, really, when you look at supplier control, one of the main reasons, Jose, that FSMA was even created and passed into law was problems with suppliers.
Yes. Yes. If I'm not wrong, Brian, I believe I read a statistic indicating that about 60% of all of the recalls, the reason was an ingredient that was brought into the facility already adulterated.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. All right. And when we drink our cup of coffee and our tea, right? I'm not asking about food safety, right? I just assume that this is Boyer's coffee, that they did a good job of maintaining that supplier control, and I trust them to do that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Tea even more so. All the ingredients. So what you're talking about, green tea. There's ginger in there. What else is in your tea, right?
Yes.
Lot.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah. And in the US, we just trust that. And as food safety professionals, we need to make sure that that's working, right?
Yeah.
So for our talk today, right? So we'll kind of go through and give our impression of kind of a couple of main different areas around supplier control. There's the requirements under third-party certifications, so GFSI, SQF, and there's been some stuff with SQF, so we'll get into that. And then at the end here, we'll have time for Q&A as well, too. So hang around for that. You can put your questions in there and let us know what you would like to know. Also, there's a little special thing that I've used in the past that is super successful. And if you want a copy of that, you can give me your email and I'll fire that off to you for free. So hang around for that. I'll get you that too. So as I mentioned, with SQF under supplier control, Jose, so big thing going on with SQF. They just came out with version 9, right?
Yep. Yeah, so we had the conference last week.
Yeah, exactly. Which I understand went pretty well.
It went pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. Hard thing to do a virtual conference. So good job.
It is.
Good job, SQF. So under supplier control, really, it kind of breaks down into, I mean, you need to really look at what those guys are doing, right? In the past, it was procurement would say, okay, we need to, we'll keep on the coffee thing, right? We need to buy coffee beans. And they would contact coffee suppliers, and the coffee suppliers would send you a specification, which in a lot of cases really was more like a sales sheet, right? It really didn't give you a whole lot of the food safety stuff that you would need. So the procurement guys were more interested in making sure that they had a good supply and that they were reliable and a good partner and the pricing was right and all the things that the procurement people care about. And then there was stuff that the food safety guys cared about, right? Because I was running quality for big food companies, and that was really super important to us. So we would have to do a lot of digging and figure this stuff out. And some companies were cooperative and some not so much, right? So you'd have to do a lot of pushing. And then came along FSMA, right? And things started kind of opening up. And a big piece of that was brokers, right? So brokers really were like, wow, I don't even in some cases own this product. I'm just helping to facilitate the relationship between the buyer and the seller, and I'm the middleman. I don't know what they do for food safety. And government kind of came along and said, well, you kind of now you do. Yeah. So I think it's been a huge change for brokers.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that I believe that we should share, Bryan, is no matter what we do, no matter which are the specific requirements that we're going to be following, we need to go back to what I will say is a source of the requirements. And I'm talking right now about the law. If you go to 21 United States Code, chapter number 9, which is a Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, there is a section there that says all the prohibited acts. And the list is huge about food. The list is huge. But I would like to mention describe 3 of them right now for this conversation today. The first one, which is basically the perfect match for our topic today, approved suppliers, is that it is prohibited by law receive something that is adulterated or misbranded. It's prohibited by law. And that carries criminal consequences.
So that term, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Jose, because that's a term that confuses people. So why don't you talk a little bit about adulteration? What does that actually mean?
Well, you know what? I don't recall, Bryan, if I mentioned that my father and the brother that follows me, they both are lawyers. So I have been with them, for a very long time. So I'm kind of used to these legal and regulatory things. The thing is that we in the food industry are typically talking about cross-contamination, and after FSMA, the cross-contact for allergens and so on. And that's what we know. But it is very nice to see how the law is structured. And now I'm going one step above the regulations that we need to follow, that we are required to follow. So in the law, when adulteration and misbranding is defined, that is in this part 4 food in the law, in the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And look at this. Adulteration is defined in section 342. Misbranding is defined in section 343. So when you take a look at the sequence, you are going to say, well, what is in 341? Well,
Right.
341 in the law is that everybody needs to define what is called a standard of identity, standard of quality, and standard of field.
Mhm.
And if you translate that language to the food industry language, for you and me, this is just the specifications of products. So whenever the products are deviating from any of their own specifications, the products are going to be adulterated or misbranded somehow because they
Right.
are not in full compliance with the actual specification of those products. And that's why specifications are so important.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's a good segue, right? Because I mean, the public is expecting, right? If you're buying tea, that it's named properly, that it's tea, right? It's not misbranded, and that tea contains tea, and it's not got other things in there that shouldn't be there that
Yep.
make it injurious and adulterated.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're saying this is green tea and you put black tea, well, the product is adulterated by definition. Is
Mhm.
it going to be hazardous? Is it going to cause illness or injury? Of course not. Still, it remains tea and you can drink it. We drink black tea. It's
Yeah,
not an issue. But the problem is that it is not exactly what you said in the specification of that product.
I
And
like how
that
you're
will
putting that.
make
Yeah.
that product adulterated right away.
And that's really, I mean, you're getting to the real root of when we talk about what's food safety and what's food quality. That's it.
There you go. And
Mhm.
actually, one more thing, Brian. When you go to the classifications of the recalls under FDA, you have the class one, class two, and class three. So, class one and class two are basically things that will cause illness or injury.
Mhm.
Class one and class two are related to food safety hazards, but the class three is most likely related to not being in compliance with the specification and having something that should not be there, which is not going to cause illness or injury, but
Hmm.
the product is not exactly as per the specification. And that is a definition of adulteration.
Hmm. So I had a couple comments here in the stream that we're getting an echo here. So I'm gonna try and do is I'm gonna turn my mic off when I'm not talking, and on the stream, guys, let us know if that helps. So we'll see if we can kind of get that fixed. Good old echoes on live streams are always kind of difficult to deal with. So for the supplier control, right now we're kind of coming back around to that because you are working with these guys to make sure that they're selling you things that are safe and selling you things that are what they are, right? That they're not selling you something that's fake, right?
Yep.
And putting together your supplier control program, as we've been talking about, there's the regulations, and this is spelled out very, very well in the Food Safety Modernization Act. Right, it is one of the main reasons the law was written, was
Yes.
because of adulteration in product that was misbranded. Right, we all remember. Well, maybe not. Maybe people don't remember the melamine in the dog food. Let's kind of give everybody a quick review of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in China, right, we had companies that were supplying protein products and other things into the US for use in all kinds of products, and in particular dog food. And one of the things that the suppliers in the US would do to make sure that the product was good is they would look at the protein level, because if you're making pet food, you need to analyze that protein for crude fats and all of these type of things. And what they found
Specifications of that product.
exactly, and they found in these criminals in China, they found that hey, if we take melamine, which is a byproduct of manufacturing chemicals, plastics, and things like that, if we put that in food and they do that test, that looks like protein. And melamine is free and protein is expensive. I'm going to put some melamine in this to make it look like there's protein in there.
To make some money.
Exactly, all to make money. What they didn't know is that it was poisonous, right? And
Yeah.
it was killing pets. It was damaging their kidneys. So people were feeding
Yeah.
their pets dog food, and the pets are getting sick and dying in some cases, and nobody knew why. And so people, of course, right, we love our pets, and they were very, very angry.
Yep. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the same situation happened with baby formula.
Yes, Yeah.
And many babies died in China because of that.
Exactly. It was
It's
terrible.
terrible. Yeah.
Terrible. And so then the government created the Food Safety Modernization Act. And so foreign supplier verification and your supply chain preventative controls, two of the main pillars, right? And FDA specifically calls out in the law under G that you have to have these programs in place.
You have to have those.
Right.
Yes.
So now you're a food safety manager, a quality manager, and you've got to try and figure all this out. It's like, wow. I mean, because you're not buying stuff from one or two people, you're buying stuff from a lot of people.
From a lot of people.
Right. And so, for example, when I worked at White Wave Foods and Dean Foods, we looked at this and did a survey of all of our plants and all of our locations. We ended up finding thousands of things that we bought.
Yeah. And the thing, Bryan, is that for each and every single thing that you are using in your process, and this is a systems approach to food manufacturing. Okay, when you set up systems, you have three phases. Phase one is everything that we're going to be using in our process. And I'm not talking only about ingredients and raw materials and additives and colors and so on. I'm also talking about packaging material and PPE and all the chemicals used for cleaning and sanitation and all the chemicals used for maintenance and so on. It's everything that we use in our process, making sure that is appropriate, that is adequate. I'm going to use the same word as the FDA, adequate. Okay. And then phase two is your process itself, is your flow chart. And then phase three is just your finished product, making sure that it complies with its own specifications.
Right. Now, something that's important for people to remember is a lot of times, I'm sure you see this too, Jose, is people say, hey, Bryan, please, is there a checklist of things that I need to do that FDA is going to come in and look for? And the answer is no, there is not. And part of that was on purpose. I was involved with trade groups that went to FDA and worked with them on the different regulations written to the laws. And when we spoke with them, we explained to them that risk is based on usage, not necessarily product. And FDA was like, what are you talking about? And so, well, let me explain. Let's say that I am buying non-fat dry milk, which is a byproduct from, making cheese or all kinds of things, right? You dry the milk and you've got non-fat dry milk. You can use that non-fat dry milk in many things. So just like our melamine example, you can use that non-fat dry milk in pet food. You could also use that exact same dry milk in infant formula.
Yeah.
The risk of me as the quality manager of those two plants is very, very different, right?
Oh my goodness. Totally.
Yes. And
that is something, Bryan, thanks God you brought that up.
Yeah.
Thanks God you brought that up, because look at this. When I was studying engineering and I was in that class discussing different ways to measure risk, you just describe exactly the same ingredient in two different products. The matrix that you use to calculate risk in those two different facilities is different.
Yes. And so when you're building your food safety programs to meet the requirements of FSMA, to meet the requirements of foreign supplier vacation, if you have third party to meet the requirements of BRCGS or SQF or whoever, you as a quality manager need to sit down and think about that.
Yeah. Yep, it is your responsibility. So look at this, Bryan. Let's go back to that first conversation about the three items that are in the law. So the first one is that one. It is prohibited by law to receive something that is adulterated or misbranded, an ingredient, raw material, whatever. It is also prohibited by law to work under insanitary conditions. Okay? You must make sure that you're working under sanitary conditions all the time. Sanitary conditions basically are defined by the GMPs. And then number three, it is prohibited by law to ship a product that is adulterated or misbranded.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to use the first one. It is prohibited to receive something that is adulterated or misbranded. Very good. How do you do that? Because if you rely only on testing, that is going to create a huge burden to the company financial.
Yeah.
You're going to be spending a lot of money in testing and testing and testing. And actually, you and me know that, and most likely everyone in this conversation knows that testing is not a guarantee that 100% is going to be fine. It's just whatever we're testing.
Right.
So testing is good as a verification activity, but it's not 100%. The real thing that is 100% is making sure that the suppliers are, and look at what I'm going to say now, Brian. The suppliers are in compliance with all of the requirements applicable to their process and their products. And those requirements from FDA and from any of the GFSI standards, they're different. And that's something that people need to know, because if you receive the visit of the FDA and your program is in compliance with any of the GFSI, is in compliance with SQF or BRC or FSSC, and they say, oh, where is your approved supplier program? Here. No, this is not in compliance with the requirements of the FDA, because for the FDA, you need to verify that your suppliers are following US regulations applicable to their products and their processes, number one. And number two, making sure that the products are not adulterated or misbranded. For GFSI, they just need to be, your suppliers must be also GFSI.
Very good point. Now, part of where people, I think, get confused, Jose, is like we were talking about with the non-fat dry milk. You need to look at what you're buying and look at risk, right? You're going to have low risk ingredients. Okay, I'm buying salt. Okay, there's some things I need to look at. I need to spec. I need to make sure it's not containing things that shouldn't be there. Okay.
Chemicals.
Yeah.
And
there's some medium risk things. I'm going to ask for some more documentation. And then there's high risk things, right? I want to know exactly what you're doing. I need to see your specifications. I want your last third-party audit. I want to know if you've had recalls. I want your food safety plan. I want everything. I may send an auditor to come visit you. You don't need to look at everybody the same, but you need to be able to explain that to FDA of how you have your program set up according to risk.
Is your program. So you should be able to explain why you're doing things, whatever is your way.
And, I mean, well, if you look at it from a regulatory standpoint, FDA does the same thing. They look at manufacturers based on risk. Ready-to-eat products where a company is making something, let's say like a sandwich, right? So they're putting together a sandwich and they're sending it out. It's ready to eat, right? As the consumer, I go to the store, I buy it, and I eat it. I'm completely dependent as the consumer on the food safety of that manufacturer. FDA says, ooh, that's high risk. We're going to pay close attention to you. You have to be doing a very, very good job at food safety.
Daily meats. Actually, you know what, Brian? This is matching exactly the new, it's new, freshly released by the FDA, the special record requirement for certain foods that are in a new list of super high risk products. This is going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and FDA, as we've seen here in the last couple of weeks, if they suspect that something that's in that high risk category, so leafy greens and things that they're looking very closely at, if FDA thinks there's a problem, they're taking action very quickly. So with the supplier piece, right? So back to the FDA and the SQF and the other standards with that, right? So it's a multi-tiered approach. And when you're using a third-party certification, that's a nice way to make sure that you're covering all these things, because as you can tell during this conversation, this is complicated stuff, right? So you've got to really, really understand this and be able to explain it to whoever is coming to look at your program.
And I don't want to say, Brian, complicated. Okay. And again, nothing personal, but I will say that it's challenging. And the challenge, in my opinion, Brian, the basis of that challenge is in fully understanding that in systems, when people develop systems, which is exactly what the FDA and what any of the GFSI are systems, you need to understand that systems are designed based on the requirements that they are going to be following. So if people is not aware that they need to read in detail every single word and every single sentence and everything that is in the regulation and whatever is the GFSI standards that they follow, well, I mean, they're going to fail naturally because they are not aware of all the requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good way of putting it, right? So I went through, so what I've been looking at here, right, I've got a nice summary that I put together on So for SQF for version 9, what they're looking at, right? And so SQF has put specifications, what we're talking about here, all into one category. So raw materials, exactly what we're talking about. But they also have in here packaging, right?
Yeah.
Big emphasis now. FDA understands that food contact packaging, right? You don't have to worry about the cardboard box, but that packaging that contacts the food, you got to look at them too.
Actually, you know what is a very good comment right now? Packaging is defined in the law, not even the regulation, in the law under as an additive to food.
Really?
And it has the characteristic that it's not going to add anything if it's made with the right, and I'm going to cite the FDA, the right food contact substance.
Right. So they're
What
looking at
about that?
migration,
So
right?
it's food.
Yeah.
Food contact packaging material is food by default. So, and actually, this is something that I can tell from my years of auditing experience. So when I was going to and visit these guys and say, okay, how do you know that the packaging material is the right one? And people will say, oh, Jose, I have a letter from the supplier. And the letter was a written letter saying to whom it may concern, all the products that we made are fine and they're good and blah, blah, blah. And that's it. Then there is a signature without mentioning what is the material, without mentioning the actual regulation that is, that describes that, yes, you can use that food contact surface or not.
Right. Absolutely. And to your point, circling back on that, everything that you're manufacturing, that material is contacting it. Everything going out your door.
Yep.
Gotta look at that. Finished product, right? So you have to have standards, and under the new SQF version 9, you have to have positive release. SQF has now said you have to have finished product specs that say, here's what my finished product needs to do. Here's how it needs to look. Here's how it needs to feel. Here's the testing I need to do to make sure it's okay. And I need to make sure that the practitioner is looking at those things and making sure that it's okay for shipping. Now, under FSMA, your PCQI, your preventive control qualified individual for food safety, should already be looking at that.
Yeah. Actually, look at this, Brian. I mean, we had a very good introduction about specifications a few minutes ago. So specifications is basically the criteria that is going to say, yeah, my product is matching with this criteria or not. How can you release a product that is not matching with its own criteria?
Yeah.
The product is going to be adulterated by definition.
Exactly. And the fourth category that SQF is looking at in this section for specifications is your services, right? So if you have people coming into your plant, you need to understand what they're doing, right? So if you have a chemical company, those chemicals need to be acceptable for use on food contact surfaces, and you need to have documentation proving that.
Yes. Yep. And I'm going to use again the systems approach. Okay. So in systems, you have basically two different types of procedures. You have procedure for controlling conditions to take care of certain, I'm going to say criteria, principle number 3, by the way. And then you have other procedures for verification. Verification is the verification of the controls. So you need procedure for controls and procedure for verification. Well, when your supplier is the one that has the control over those, I'm going to say specifications of the products that you are buying, well, it's up to them. The only thing that you can do is verify. How do you verify? Well, you audit them, and the FDA says that under FDA requirements, you can have a qualified auditor performing a regulatory on-site audit. That is not a GFSI audit.
Yeah,
that is totally different. Okay. Now, under GFSI, yes, you may send, anyone hearing this conversation may hire you or me and say, hey, Jose, Bryan, please, can you go there and try to see how these guys are doing? If they're doing a good job in making sure that they're working under sanitary conditions, and that the products are really, any hazard that they might be controlling is really under control. And that is totally different. And those are different requirements. And that should be part of your approved supplier program, guys.
Yeah. Now, you make an important point. This was called out in FSMA, is you need to be aware of hazards that they're not controlling. So, for example, in the dairy industry, a lot of times, let's say you're making skim milk and other products like that, you have excess cream. and you're skimming that cream off and you're selling it to somebody else, and it hasn't been pasteurized. If I'm selling that to you, Jose, you need to know that. It's like, hey, Jose, you want to buy cream? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, by the way, this cream is unpasteurized, and I'm relying on you, Jose, to address that food safety risk because I'm not doing it.
And you know what, Bryan? And in that case, the company that is selling that cream is supposed to provide a letter, what is the name in the FDA? Attestation letters.
Yes.
Yeah, so the manufacturer need to tell the client, guys, watch out because my product contains whatever, listeria, salmonella, E. coli, cryptosporidium, whatever, and it's up to you to control that thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And what we would do is we would put a notice on the COA too and say, warning, contains a hazard that's not controlled. So we were letting the customer know every time, right? So we were making sure that that was communicated.
Yep.
Awesome. Good conversation. Good conversation. Let's take a look at questions here. So we always want to leave time here for this conversation, right? Because Jose and I are obviously covering a ton of territory here with supply chain, right? This is why this is FDA called us out under FSMA as a preventive control. They said this is super important. You need to have really, really good programs because if we're looking at your food safety plans, we're going to really question you on this. So let's take a look here at the comments, right? So we're live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Periscope. So guys, there's a comment here. Let's see what we've got here. Francisco is asking here, Jose, can you expand on the dry milk use and explain what standards will have to be met for each? What would be key on the specifications for each purposes? Interesting.
That's a good one. So look at this. If it's milk, I'm going to say that company is required to follow preventive control for human food, of course, 21 CFR 117. 100% sure the food labeling, 21 CFR 101. 100% sure sanitary transportation of food, which is 21 CFR 1.900. And for sure, that company should be very aware what is in the pasteurized milk ordinance. Am I correct, Bryan?
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of this too, if I'm the quality manager sitting in the plant that's buying this non-fat dry milk, it's my responsibility to define that. I'm the person who is determining the risk. So again, it's going to be tied, Francisco, back to what I'm making. So let's say that I am making infant formula, right? So I've got a long list of things, right? So there's Enterobacters and other type of things that have been identified in the micro side that are very, very dangerous to babies. So I need to talk. And so part of this, and this is really, really important for as you're developing your supplier control system, is this is not you as the purchaser coming up with a list of commands and then just sending that out as an email to your suppliers. They're going to ignore it. For those high risk people, you need to get them on the phone and talk with them. Get with your procurement group and say, here's the things that we're concerned about. Tell me how you do this.
Yeah.
I need copies of this. Here's why I need these copies. You need to develop that relationship. And one of the tools that we had that worked really, really well is we developed a scorecard for our key suppliers. So we identified, so like in this example, non-fat dry milk. Okay, procurement, what are the things that you're worried about in procurement? Well, we're worried about pricing and orders on time and completeness of delivery and help with R&D and all these things that they care about. Okay, quality, what are you worried about? Well, we're worried about your GFSI audit, and we're worried about recalls, and we're worried about complaint rates, and we're worried about getting all of our information on time.
Yep.
And then we created a scorecard, and my supply chain quality manager would get with the procurement manager, and every quarter with our key suppliers, we would have a meeting with them and say, here's your score. And we had an Excel sheet, and we would use that then to give them a score. So I got 30 points in quality, procurement got 30 points on their side, and would create a nice little graph. And if I was happy in quality and procurement was happy, you got a green score. We're smiled. If we can do more business with you in the future, we would love to because you're a good supplier.
Yes.
Now, if I was unhappy and procurement was happy, that's a yellow, and vice versa. And we would tell them and let them know.
Now, that is exactly right. Because purchasing, Bryan, ingredients, food ingredients, and I'm highlighting here, I'm kind of putting in bold the word food because I want to make sure that that word has exactly the same meaning as in the definitions in
Mm-hmm.
the law, okay? Which is food means any article that is food or drink. And look at this one, for men or other animals.
Yeah.
And then the other definition says chewing gum is food.
Yeah.
And the third one says any article that is being used as an article for the original ones. So all of your ingredients must be food by definition.
Interesting. Yeah, and that
Yep.
can be confusing sometimes. So you got to work through these things. And so if you put your email in the comment section and say, hey, Bryan, I want a copy of that scoring sheet, I'll send that to you for free, right? So let me know and I'll send that over to you to kind of give you an idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Let's see here. What other good questions that we got here? So Francisco was asking about packaging. So he's saying packaging is not food. Edible packaging is not very common in the food industry. Requirements are quite different. I don't know that I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we may have different approaches, Bryan, and I'm okay. You are a consultant. I'm a consultant. It is possible that we have consultants in the audience as well as anyone that is using our services. So going back to a comment that I'm looking at, guys. I'm looking at my iPad here. That's how I can see who's talking and what is going, and that's why you can see me, taking a peek at this. Francisco, I believe that you are not in agreement with what I mentioned that is written in the law. You're more than welcome. You can go to 21 United States Code, Section 321. And look at the definition of additives, and you're going to find the definition of food contact packaging material there.
Yeah. I mean, so technically he's correct, right? Yeah. Nobody's going to eat plastic.
Of course not.
No.
But the thing is that you need to make sure that whatever is plastic, cardboard, whatever, is not going to add anything to the food under the um, conditions of use, Bryan. That's also something that we need to take into consideration here.
Yeah, this reminds me, there was an issue in Europe a number of years ago with brie. And so when you go to the grocery store and you see brie, a lot of times they'll have the food service version, right? So they'll have these giant wheels of brie, right? 1 kilogram, 2 kilogram. And you go to the deli counter and you order the brie, right? And they cut you a chunk and they give it to you. Well, on top of that brie, they put a label. And the ink that was in that label was poisonous. And it was migrating into the cheese. And so you would take the label off and the top of the cheese was blue. And you're like, okay. And then people ate it and got sick.
Yep. Actually, let me tell you another good example. So when we go to the supermarket, Bryan, and we buy one of these jars, a gallon of milk, that plastic is designed to hold, I'm going to say, ambient temperature and refrigeration temperature. But that jar was not designed to be heated.
No.
Do you know this?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone that says, oh, you know what? I'm going to heat some water because I'm going to make some tea. And because we're a bunch of people here, I'm going to grab one of these empty jars, go fill it up with water, put it inside the microwave and heat it up to, boiling point. You cannot do that because it is possible that depending on the materials being used for the manufacture, you may have some migration. That jar was not designed for that temperature.
It's a good point. Here's a little dairy trivia. Why I worked in the dairy industry. So when you buy a gallon of milk, that plastic jug is tinted, right? It's kind of a milky whitish color. Why is that? And that's done on purpose.
I have no clue. You're the expert there.
UV light damages the milk. So you can get, so they color the cartons to minimize the damage to the milk as it's sitting in the store.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. Let's see what other questions we got here. Leaching and packaging. Yeah. So we've been kind of talking about. So another question, comment here from Francisco. Recall packaging based on presence of metal, small pieces of aluminum in the cardboard. You would need to recall if present in your cookies. They're different. Well, yeah. I mean, so, and
is that cardboard in contact with the food or not?
Yeah, yeah. And so this is something that you need to understand from a QA standpoint as well, right? People are using more and more recycled content. What is that recycled content?
Yep. Is that approved to be used in contact with food or just as a secondary packaging material?
Yep. And so the recycled content may be from non-food grade materials.
It could be.
You need to know. You need to
Yep.
figure this stuff out.
Yep.
So one of the cool things here that I found here too, Jose, is we can put up, and let's see, we can put up QR codes.
Oh.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I can only do one at a time. So this QR code, if you scan this with your phone, which is something that's pretty cool, I believe this one's for me. So you can scan that, and that'll take you to my website.
Great.
And this code is for you. And then you can scan that and take you to Jose's website. So that's really cool. It's amazing, this technology.
We're getting too techie.
We are. Yeah. So Jill, yeah, UV light.
Anything for facilitating anything to anyone that is hearing our conversation.
Exactly. Wow. We've been talking now for 41 minutes. It's amazing, right? And we're just scratching the surface on this, right? But people, It's Friday and people have busy days and things like that. So I think this is a good point to kind of close out this topic because, we could talk about supplier management all day long.
All day long. So I agree.
Everybody appreciate it again. So we're going to be doing this talk every Friday at this time. Please, if there's things that you want to learn more about in food safety and you're developing your systems, fire us off an email. Let us know, and we'll look at that and we'll figure out, is that a topic we want to do on the show? So here is my email. So barmentrout@foodsafetyfoundation.com. And of course, on these live streams, this gets recorded automatically, so you can go back and see these. Here is Jose's email. So jose.sabal@sabalfsc, so foodsafetyconsulting.com. So there's those. I think we've answered everybody's questions. So again, Jose, fantastic conversation. I'm loving doing it. Right? This is the second live broadcast we've done. We did one last week, and I love this. This is a ton of fun. So thank you.
Getting better.
Yes, it is. So cool. So again, snow on the weekend here this weekend, so I'll have to stay warm, and so hopefully you'll do the same.
I'll do the same, but I need to stay cold or cool.
And as we finish here, so this is my dog Lenny has made an appearance. So
hey Lenny.
Lenny says goodbye. So have a great weekend, Jose, and we'll talk soon.
And you too, Bryan. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.